Today we've got a great story of revenge against an awful HOA. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, petty revenge on my dad and his fiancee. My dad has always been the absent kind of father who never paid much attention to me or mom. Don't get me wrong, he was never abusive, just kind of out there. Free thinker, jazz musician by trade, and so on. He decided to divorce mom when I was 18, which would have been okay if he didn't cheat on her multiple times, and didn't fail to mention that he had already filed for divorce to my mom. I guess you can imagine that receiving the divorce papers from a random postman one fine morning is not one of my fondest memories. So my parents divorced, mom was devastated, but everyone moved on. Dad married one of the singers he had cheated with prior to the divorce, and we just kind of let it go. A year ago, my dad and his now wife got a child, a small baby boy who I can proudly call my brother. During some of the visits to their house, I noticed that my bro loves anything that makes a lot of noise, using all the toys given to him just to make a ruckus, be it wooden cubes or anything else, and that is when a sinister thought was born in my head. It is his first birthday tomorrow, and I got him a beautiful marching drum. Try not to pay attention to that. I almost kind of see this as like the fun uncle treatment. I know OP said literally brothers, or even like the grandparent experience where you get to visit the kid, you get to give them all the noisemakers and play with them all you want, and then you get to go home and you don't have to worry about the annoyances that come with it after the fact in your everyday life. You get to have all the fun of it without any of the responsibility. Presentation That 2839 commented, "There are many loud toys. Does Fisher-Price still make that walking popper? According to Amazon and Walmart, yes they do. Merry Christmas." Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy awesome stories of revenge, it would be amazing if you left a like or left a review if you're listening to my podcast. That said, our next story is, for nearly 2 years, I got up to $1.25 per gallon off fuel for my husband's jerk of an ex-wife. Background, my husband's ex-wife lives about an hour away from us with their kids, and I would drive them to school on the weeks when they stayed with us. The town they live in has a grocery store with a point system where they can be redeemed for fuel, except it doesn't actually sell fuel. Our town has the same grocery store and, being larger, has the fuel pumps in the parking lot. X is an awful person who worked really hard to alienate the kids from us. I say worked because they're older now and are able to see what she's doing. She regularly bought all of her groceries at this particular store specifically for the fuel rewards, and would save them up to fill her vehicle in our town when she would make the trip. The rewards card she had used had been set up under my husband's old phone number, so I would fuel up, enter the phone number, and drive to my favorite, less expensive, grocery store. It took about 2 years for her to realize she rarely got any sort of discount and for her to stop shopping there. I was a little bummed, but I was no longer making the drive to school, so I just don't understand it, Bill. I don't know where all my fuel rewards points are going. I wonder if they thought the store was just scamming her. Like, these points really just don't seem to go as far as they used to. PMax480 commented, "I'm still using the points of someone who registered their card, but it seems mistyped the last digit of their phone number to match my phone number. 9 years, still going strong. Thanks, Emily." Our next story is, "Try to make me look bad? Nobody will see you." Or, "Why you should not upset the official photographer." This happened a few years ago. I was one of about 5 teachers in a summer camp. One of the teachers was very young, just out of university. As often happens, he thought he was the best. For some reason, he started complaining about me behind my back, never to my face, and making a big deal about miscommunications. At one point, all the teachers had a meeting that I missed because, like most meetings, they are a waste of time. But he kept complaining about me, calling me stupid, etc. I know about this because the other teachers told me. He was the only person that had a problem with me. Again, not a word to my face. Cue my petty revenge. One of my tasks as a hobby photographer was to take pictures so at the end we could have a slideshow of summer camp moments. It took me hours and hours of extra work, but I photoshopped him out of every single picture. When possible, I just cropped his head out, so there were many pictures with only his leg or an arm in the frame. The only picture where he finally appeared was the official photo with everyone in it. It would be strange if he didn't appear on this picture, so I made him look as red as if he was sunburnt, made his eyes look bloodshot, and made his teeth look as yellow as canned corn. Nobody ever said anything to me. Most people look for themselves in the pictures, and everyone else found themselves just fine. I wonder if OP left this guy with a complex. Imagine nobody else mentions it, but they can't find themselves in any of the pictures, and then the one that they do, they look red, they look flushed, they look like they haven't brushed their teeth in a year. Like, I wonder if it gave that guy a moment where he took a step back and he's like, oh my god, is this how I look? Unstable Unicorn 666 commented, I can imagine years later someone remembers him, maybe had a crush on him, looking at those pictures, not finding him on any of them, then finding the last one and thinking, oh no, he was that ugly. Our next story is demanding and demeaning client. Worked at a major investment firm for 10 plus years, was on a team that serviced high net worth clients. Many of these clients were demanding, entitled, and downright rude. One particular client got in my face during a client appreciation dinner and told me, I expect you to immediately call me whenever there's something going on with the markets, and I expect you to invite me to all of these events going forward. I was in charge of invite lists, and every time an event came up, his name was the first name removed from the list. He missed out on golf outings, dinners, trading seminars, and market updates. Ironic thing was that he never realized it. I mean, if you're in a position where you can't really actually follow through on any kind of these demanding threats, what do you think is going to happen? Like, I know in some jobs clients are everything, but some client comes along and tries to strong arm you and go, you're gonna make sure I'm on every list. I mean, if I'm in OP's position and it doesn't hurt me to just leave them off every list going forward, like what are they gonna do, complain? You bet your butt I'm leaving them off every list. Assist Pure commented, I worked for a high-end car dealership, and what I found was the people who actually made the money, who were successful, were the most down-to-earth, wonderful people you could meet. It was their kids who hadn't earned scrap who were jerks. Our next story is, I gave someone decaf for 5 months. I once worked in a restaurant as a senior barista and we had a new chef join. He was a complete jerk. He spoke to the front of house and KPs like trash because apparently he used to work on some big yacht as a private chef. He was late 40s and would always hit on any young girl who was between 16 and 20, and it got so bad he started cornering them in the kitchen, etc., and trying to flirt. Myself and others brought it up to management, but they didn't care, so I thought the only way I could get back is by making his 12-hour shift miserable by always giving him decaf, and I told the other baristas to do the same. He would have 4 coffees and still be yawning, and I'd think, yeah, freak you, jerk. Normally, switching up anything that somebody's ingesting without their consent would be a problematic thing, but hopefully I think we can all agree that what OP did here was relatively harmless and hey, honestly, for their health may have been a beneficial thing for those 5 months. I mean, if you can go without caffeine, it definitely is better than going with, I personally say as I continued to chug yet another caffeinated drink. Expert Slip 7543 commented, when I worked in a law firm in a large city decades ago, the firm had a strict rule that the pot of coffee available to everyone in the office must always be decaffeinated. It was in an ordinary pot, not marked decaf. It made no sense to me until the first time I witnessed hours of depositions, pre-recorded Q&A testimony to use in court, happening in our office. It was sabotage against enemy attorneys. The visiting opposing counsel could drink as much coffee as they liked, but it would do nothing to perk them up. Thus, they would, in theory at least, give less effective guidance to their clients, who had sued our clients. Our next story is, you want me to do your work? I'll let you fail. I took part in a seminar at university about a year ago. Part of the course was a presentation that 2 students each had to give. I was put into a group with a guy, let's call him T. T hasn't been there since the first lesson and hasn't received any messages from me, which is why I actually did everything myself. Now, a few days before the reviewit was to be held, he asked me whether I had already done something and whether I could give him something that he could present. I then told him that I had researched it. I then said that I would give T all the information that I found out about his part of the presentation. I then sent him a text and a few bullet points, which were full of errors. I then wrote to the lecturer that T had prepared a few slides himself and insisted on including them in the presentation. We then gave the presentation, and his part was a real disaster, which also made him leave the course. You know, I'm glad that out of the sea of people who apparently made it off of the shoulders of people doing the work for them, you know, you hear all of these stories of these entitled people who either nepotismed or paid their way through or simply did what this guy did and fed off the kindness of other people who were willing to help them for whatever reason, and instead they actually got held accountable. Punk Linux commented, in college, I was part of a group participation where one of the members was the usual slacker. never showed up to the group meetings more than once or twice, contributed 0. The teacher was wholly unsympathetic, stating it was up to the group leader to manage his team and our grade would reflect upon this effort. How am I supposed to do this? The teacher replied, by any means necessary. This is not high school, this is real life, son. The group leader was the wrong guy for the job, in retrospect. He came from a rather entitled background, and I suspect might have been his high school's bully. He cornered the guy who was drunk at a bar and said, "You either finish this group project with us, or you drop the class." The guy supposedly said, "Or what?" That's all I know. The slacker dropped the class. I suspect our leader convinced him in some way that he was not willing to discuss, perhaps percussively, and thankfully, I never had him in a group project after that. Our next story is, I hope she enjoys the eggs. First, I have a non-visible disability that sometimes acts up. Today I went to a grocery store, parked in a handicap spot, I have the plates, and grabbed a scooter. When I got out of the car, a lady started yelling insults at me for using a spot I'm not entitled to, and got worse when she saw me take a scooter. Going through the store, she kept coming near me and making nasty remarks. The entire time I ignored her. Finally, I get to the egg section. I needed several dozen and the 18 counts are on sale, so I'm going through them to make sure the packages don't have broken eggs. Since I was blocking access to the door, I helped out others with getting their eggs and making sure they didn't have any that were broken. The packages with broken eggs were stacked up on an empty shelf. She comes up and says, "Are there 18 in there?" as if she never heard of checking the eggs for damage and demanded I get her 2 packages. So I just grabbed 2 packages off the top of the discard pile and gave them to her, and she put them in her cart and went away. It is common knowledge, right, to check your eggs when you're at the grocery store? I feel like if anything, it's one of those passed down behaviors that is solely learned through observing. Like when I was a kid and I went with my mom to the grocery store, I watched her look at the eggs and pop it open and check each one. I was never told explicitly, this is what you do, but it's like a caveman watching his dad throw a spear for dinner. You learn to check the eggs before you take them home. Elysion commented, "Thank you so much. I get so sick of people like that." Had an old lady berating me for using a handicap spot. I told her to be happy she's healthy and her friend laid into her. Yes, going into the store, I look fine. Coming out, I am a limping mess. These invisible illnesses are a pain in the butt sometimes because of people like that. She took pics of my plates, demanded to see my parking placard registration with my license. I told her to call the cops. They can run my plates and pay me a visit to see these things. Like I'm giving a crazy butt my license. Our next story is Island Revenge. My ex-best friend was a full-blown grandiose narcissist. I'm talking about someone who refers to herself unironically as an alpha. She's a dive instructor and she was given the nickname Hitler in her dive school and she was proud of that. She's very charismatic and has created a small cult around her on the island she works on. These people are anyway cut off from the rest of the world, and every year when I visit the island, I've seen them getting more and more in her service, and the ones who don't fall in line become social pariahs. It's a small island with few permanent residents, and no one wants to be socially isolated, so they toe her line. Well, today, an old dean of mine reached out to me. She knows I'm an active diver, and she wanted some advice on who to dive with on this island as she's planning a trip. Now, for over the last decade, I've been steadily channeling work Alpha's way. I did the math and thanks to me, over the years, 14 people have dived with her, my friends and family, and at least 6 of those have been repeat customers. Diving is an expensive hobby and she's made a pretty package through me. She also gets commissions on accommodation, etc. when people book through her. Despite all this, she has behaved very unprofessionally with me on my last several trips, doing things like screaming at me in the dive shop or on the boat in front of other people, and one time even kicking me off the boat for someone else because she double booked. Totally unprovoked and totally unprofessional. It's almost like she was testing how far she could push me. Well, she pushed me too far. I snapped and ended the relationship, so I sent my dean a detailed email about the best dive schools, where to stay, where to eat, how to get around, etc. I ranked Alpha's dive school 3rd in my list, a ranking TripAdvisor agrees with, and I left a small note at the bottom. If you do dive there, steer clear of this instructor. It's not much, but I feel good. After 10+ years of championing someone and getting treated like crap in return, it felt like a victory. I mean, that's just the cost of doing business, right? I mean, if it's not nice to go with you or book under you or work with you, I mean, whether it's through that immediate person or just reviews online, it's going to get out there, right? I mean, there was probably a very good reason that TripAdvisor says they are the third-ranked person. In fact, considering everything, I think it's fair to say, why was OP having so much loyalty to them anyways? CareBear66 commented, "Well done, OP. I wanted a dive trip with a group I'd not been with before. The organizer, dive master of the trip, had a bunch of regulars. I was a first-timer with this group. I have over 400 dives, with 200 of them being more difficult cold water dives. The dive master wanted me to take her beginner class at an additional cost. Nope. She was a little Napoleon. While I couldn't leave a review as this was 15 years ago, I did get a little petty revenge. One of her regulars was having a lot of trouble with balancing her buoyancy. She approached me to ask how I was controlling mine. Long story, but her weights were all wrong. I got her sorted, and the rest of the trip was great for the young girl. The dive master was livid that someone else knew more than she did." OP responded saying, "Some dive masters really can be petty tyrants. That girl was lucky you were on her dive. There's a special place in my heart for more experienced divers who take the time to help others out." Our next story is Salted the Garden. This was many years ago when I was in middle school. I lived with my dad part-time as a child of divorce. His girlfriend Elle agreed to move in if he bought a bigger house with 3 bedrooms because she wanted a guest bedroom. The house had a master bedroom, my dad and his girlfriend's, and 2 other bedrooms. One was about 50% bigger than the other, and the little one was pink with a ballerina wallpaper border. Elle decided that the bigger room had to be the guest bedroom, and I got the tiny ballerina room. I fought and lost. I had to get a twin-sized bed because the room could not hold a queen and a homework desk. I hated it. Worst of all, Elle had a dog that always had fleas. While I was at my mom's, Elle let her dog sleep in my bed, so I got fleas. I complained, I fought, I lost. I'd always been a good kid, no trouble, straight A's, hall monitor, a real goody two-shoes, but this pushed me over the limit. Elle planted 2 very fancy gardens, one for vegetables and one for flowers. She spent a lot of money on the flowers and was really into them. So I got the salt we used for when the driveway gets icy and began working it into the dirt in her garden. Everything died, nothing grew. A year later, she planted more fancy flowers and veggies, so I salted the earth again. Nothing grew again. Elle and my dad broke it off before year 3, but I'd already had my salt ready. She never knew it was me. Neither did my dad. I wish I'd done more, but once she was gone, I moved into the bigger room and burned the flea-ridden mattress. It's kind of off topic, but the story kind of reminds me of when I was dealing with really annoying growing weeds, and something reminded me of the phrase salt of the earth. I was about to turn and use some of those potentially cancer-causing chemicals to make sure the weeds go away for a long time, until I realized I can just get like a bunch of pool salt and just get rid of the weeds pretty naturally and safely that way. It worked really well too. Vox289 commented, "My ex-wife's mother was a religious fruitcake who made it her mission to make me leave her daughter. Whenever we would be at her house, I would put some powdered weed killer into those little refillable gelatin capsules you get at the pharmacy ahead of time, and then use my finger to push the capsules deep into her potted plants. Not all of them, just a random few. It would take weeks before they would get watered enough for the capsule to dissolve, and then bam, dead plant. But I hadn't been there for weeks, so she couldn't figure out how to pin it on me, and sometimes I'd skip a holiday completely." Our next story is, I ruined my classes last year of team sports. This was from way back when I was 14 years old in my last year of middle school. I was the weird, nerdy kid, but liked sports casually. They were, and still are, fun to play, and that's about as deep as it will ever go. My grade school/middle school was a private school, which at the time was on its second to last year before it closed. In my class, the boys consisted of myself and 5 other kids. One did not want to do sports at all and refused to join anything. So that left 5 kids even interested in playing sports, meaning the only sport we could play was basketball. Just like most sports, I wasn't particularly good at basketball, but I liked playing it and found it fun. However, my coach was a jerk and was one of those "my kid is an amazing athlete" type of sports dads. I'm pretty sure if it weren't for the fact that he had to play me for his kid to even play a sport, I wouldn't be playing a whole lot. At one point, he even just outright insulted me. Combine that with me learning the kids in my class were talking about me behind my back, and I finally had enough. We had only played one game. I came into the gym for practice, uniform in hand, and threw it at the coach. I shouted at him and the other 4 kids, "Freak you, I quit." I remember seeing their faces as they all slowly realized what that meant, freaked out, tried to stop me, but I didn't care. I finished the school year and went to a different high school and ended up getting into cross-country/track, where the coach was amazing and made me enjoy sports again. Meanwhile, to my knowledge, none of the other kids ever went that far in sports. And anytime I ever saw the old basketball coach after that, he never looked me in the eye and pretended I didn't exist. I don't care. I won. I ruined his last year of being able to coach his kid and enjoy sports with his children because him and all those kids were jerks. I mean, this is just about being logical. Even if you don't like the other kid, he's your only teammate, your only option. In any situation like this, it's so moronic to berate and insult and belittle somebody who, at the end of the day, you need to have around. It's like, what did you expect to happen? Tomato Sauce Bread commented, "God, my dad was my baseball coach from the start of t-ball to the end of high school. Worst years of my freaking life. All baseball was a game to me, and this freaker is yelling and cussing me out for not doing good enough. It's just a game. It's like cussing your kid out over a game of Monopoly." I don't know, maybe you saved that kid from his crap dad. This next story is ripping people off during COVID lockdown. During the first year of COVID lockdowns, everyone was trying to buy home gym equipment. I was so angry that people were marking up brand new weights and bars 3 to 4 times just to make a profit. Every now and then, the local sporting goods store would get a shipment of plates and bars totaling 300 pounds. I think the deal was $250. Every time I went to the store, they were sold out. I would search Craigslist and I saw the brand new set I was looking for being offered at $850. This guy even took a picture of the same set still in the shopping cart from the same store. It ticked me off that there were lines outside of the sporting goods store, with some of those people just trying to rip people off during a pandemic. I decided to respond to the ad, and at first it was full of anger, asking why they wanted to rip people off and to get a real job. The guy told me to freak off and just lift bricks or go buy my own set for $250. So I created another email address and responded to the same ad. I asked if he could meet me somewhere because I was interested. He told me he got off work at 4 and would have to load the weights into his truck. He kept asking for my phone number, and I said I'll reply with it when it gets closer to 4 p.m. I never did include my phone number, but kept telling him I would meet him in a mall parking lot. I chose a place about 25 minutes away from where he was located and close to me, just so I knew he would have to drive a decent amount. I responded to him through Craigslist and told him I was running 15 to 20 minutes late but on my way, and asked what car I should look for. I wanted to waste more of his time too. Knowing what car it was, I drove by and saw him waiting outside his SUV with the hatch up and the 300-pound box of weights and Olympic bar. I sent a final email to him saying, "Hey, sorry, I drove by the sporting goods store on the way and just found the same set you're selling on sale for $250. Yeah, I'm kind of with OP. I get it, scalping can be pretty lucrative, but I mean, to even be as slimy as to go and take a picture of it in the shopping cart, where you're basically broadcasting to anybody that would look at that ad, hey look, I bought this at retail price, so you can pay me 2 to 3 times the value. It's just so slimy, and honestly, I will never forgive scalpers for what they did to graphics card prices for computers. Pre-pandemic, pre-silicon shortages, they were so much less expensive. Then scalping stepped in, you couldn't get a graphics card for more than like double the price, and now the retailers go, alright, I guess that's the new standard price that everybody's gonna pay. 3 Viking boys commented, he deserved it. There was another guy trying to profit from COVID. He bought all of the hand sanitizer that he could lay his hands on. I think he ended up with approximately $17,000 worth of stock. People were outraged, so the law responded by preventing him from reselling. That was very satisfying, and so was your petty revenge. Our next story is, I got revenge on a longtime bully on the very last day of high school. Hey y'all, I, 23-year-old female, had a high school bully that was quite frankly relentless since we were in 7th grade. Now, I know that it was very immature what I did, but it gave me a laugh knowing I'd never see her ever again. My elder sister came to visit and brought stink bombs, not the kind that needed to be lit or the sprays. This stink bomb was in a thick glass, almost bullet-shaped casing. All you do is step on it or sit on it and the liquid inside practically embeds itself into whatever object it touches before it dries. With the help of a friend, we were able to sneak it into the top small pocket of her book bag. This is important to the story because she would always sit on her backpack since she didn't like the way the chairs or benches felt on her butt. Don't ask me why, I'm not sure, but on graduation day, that's when we executed our plan and all we had to do was wait. They had us all in the gym to inspect our attire before the ceremony began. Well, little Miss Priss decided to sit on her bag while she was waiting and crack, boom! The stink bomb broke and seeped through the bag and onto her gown. She had to do the ceremony smelling like straight sewage. Unfortunately, the poor people beside her were gagging and almost throwing up during the whole thing. She never found out it was me, but seeing her embarrassment was satisfaction enough for me. I definitely haven't heard of a stink bomb quite like that, but I guess it's nice to know you could have a future side hustle as a pickpocketer after being able to plant that stink bomb if you wanted to. Funlet6140 commented, "When I graduated, I had to stand next to a big jerk who was a bully. He terrorized everyone around him. As soon as the ceremony was over, he was moving to Maine. As we walked up the stairs to take our places on the podium, I tripped him and stomped on his hand. A lot of other students pretty much did the same thing. He spent the whole ceremony glaring at me and telling me I was dead. I ducked away after the ceremony and took pictures, etc., but I never saw him again." Our next story is, "You want me to pay for repairs for the HOA roof? You can't handle the HOA roof." Well, over a decade ago, I lived under the nasty, petty, vindictive thumb of an HOA. I mean, who hasn't, am I right? I had clashed with the board for years over illegal special assessments and failure to ever enforce rules against board members' friends. My crowning achievement was forcing them to either grant every homeowner full, unfettered access to all roof patios, or limit roof repair expenses only to those units who wrongfully claimed the roof areas were a part of their units. Despite the fact that their deeds did not grant them private rights to roof areas, each homeowner on the top floor had fenced off their roof space and, in one instance, built an unpermitted sunroom. Additionally, I reported the sunroom to the city and it had to be removed because no permit, too heavy for roof, causing damage to roof, the same damage that the board wanted everyone to pay for. It was a lot of time and energy just to fight people trying to screw us. Eventually, I was ready to sell my condo. Because I was selling for sale by owner, I did my own marketing. As part of my marketing, I bought the domain of my unit number plus street name and built a website for the unit/sale. While doing so, I noticed the .com/net/org domains for the building's street address were available for purchase. So I snagged those too, as well as street number, street name, HOA.com/org/net. And I sold the place and moved out. 6 months or so later, I received an email from the HOA board president asking if I owned those domains. I replied that I did. She told me they belonged to the property, and now that I didn't live there, I had to turn them over. I told her she needed to replace the HOA's lawyers if they told her that, and the board was welcome to purchase the domains from me for the tidy sum of $5,000. Why $5,000? Because that's the amount they wanted each homeowner to pay in special assessments for the roof repairs needed from the illegal sunroom and fencing. I feel like there would definitely be a lot of people who would do a lot more vindictive stuff with those domains now that they have them. Not that necessarily I would think all too many people would find themselves going to street number, street name, HOA.com, but still. It at least would feel good. Screaming Mime commented, "OP, use those domains to host pages exposing the crap the HOA was doing to you and your neighbors. People may go there thinking it was the HOA website, and that may make them reconsider to live in that community." But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another awesome revenge story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.